AI never sleeps, and this week has been absolutely insane. We have a new open source model that's state of the art. It's especially good at coding and even beats Anthropic's Claude. In under 2 weeks, since Google released their legendary image editor Nano-Banana, we have yet another mysterious model which could probably beat it. We have another open source model that's as good as similar models from the top AI labs. But get this, it was developed by a Chinese food delivery company, out of all things. This AI can create extremely accurate 3D models from just a few photos of an object or character. We have a new Minecraft simulator which you can interact with in real time. This runs exactly like Minecraft, except it's not. Like, nothing is pre-programmed or pre-coded. Everything is just generated on the fly as you move around. Tencent releases a new 3D world generator that's really accurate and consistent. Plus, we have a new text-to-speech generator and voice cloner which supports many different languages. Finally, we have a humanoid robot that can do the dishes, and a lot more. So let's jump right in. First up, this AI is pretty cool. So Tencent just released HunyuanWorld-Voyager. And this creates a 3D world from just a single reference image. So here are some examples. Notice that the user can specify the camera path to control how to move across the scene. Now, we've seen other so-called game generators before, like Google's Genie 3 or Tencent's Hunyuan Gamecraft, which can also generate interactive scenes of a user navigating through a 3D world. But notice that the outputs of these generators are just video. These are essentially video generators. For HunyuanWorld-Voyager, the difference here is that it can actually create a consistent 3D point cloud from just your image, as you can see in the lower left corner. It's actually reconstructing a 3D point cloud of the scene, which would help increase the accuracy and consistency of this 3D world as you move around it. And like the other 3D world generators, which I've featured on my channel before, you can also easily customize the style of the 3D scene. So for example, you can turn it into a snowy scene like this, or you can change it from day to night. Now, the unique thing about HunyuanWorld-Voyager is it doesn't just generate a video, but it also generates a depth estimate. And then here's another example. And so because it's able to jointly generate depth and RGB videos, this allows for effective and direct 3D reconstruction. This allows the generation to be way more robust and consistent. So if you compare the generations from Voyager versus other similar generators, note that the leftmost column is the original input image, and then after a few frames into the video, notice that the details from the original image are preserved in Voyager. So for example, notice this painting plus this table remains the same as you move up the stairs. All the details on this wall also remain the same as you move forward. Same with all the items here, plus this shower head, plus this towel, they all remain the same as you rotate left in this scene. However, for all these other competitors, notice that, especially for the areas that are outlined in red, these areas are not aligned with the original image. So Voyager is a lot more accurate and consistent. If you look at this benchmark on novel view synthesis, notice that Voyager outcompetes all these other competitors. And then if you look at these benchmarks on various things like camera control, object control, content alignment, 3D consistency, etc., on average, Voyager scores the highest. The nice thing is, if you scroll up to the top of the page, they've actually released a GitHub repo which contains all the instructions on how you can download and run this locally on your computer. However, note that here it says that the minimum GPU memory required is 60 gigabytes for a 540p generation, and 80 gigabytes is recommended. However, because this is open source, if this gets a lot of traction, I'm sure there's going to be more quantized and compressed versions that can run on lower VRAM in the future. Anyways, all the links are up here, so if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Next up, this AI is super useful. It's called ReconViaGen, and this can create 3D models from a few images of an object at multiple angles. So here are some examples. You can input multiple photos of this figure at different angles and plug it through this AI, and it would generate an extremely accurate 3D model. Or here's yet another example. Notice that even though the character design is quite complex, it's able to generate this 3D model very accurately. And then here are a few other examples for your reference. Now, the benefit of uploading multiple photos at different views is you can capture all the details of the object, including its front, side, and back views. Whereas for other 3D model generators, if they only accept one photo, then it kind of just guesses what the back of the character would look like, and sometimes this would not be accurate. Whereas for here, notice that it's able to correctly capture all the features of the input character. Now, instead of just inputting multiple images, you can also input a video, which is essentially just a ton of image frames, and it can also reconstruct a 3D model from the video. Note that even though there are a ton of different objects in this video, plus the camera is kind of shaky, it's able to correctly reconstruct all these 3D objects on the table. And all the details of these objects do look correct. This is very impressive. Or here's another example where we can input this video and get it to reconstruct the entire scene. And notice that everything is correct, including all the items on the table, the chairs, the plant, etc. Here's another example where the input is a video of a character, and these videos were generated with ByteDance's Dreamina. Well, we can plug it through this AI and it would create a 3D model of this character. Or here are some other examples. So, if you've generated a gorgeous character using a video generator, which you want to create a 3D model of, this would be the perfect tool for that. Here are some even trickier examples of very detailed characters. But again, it's able to reconstruct a 3D model of them very accurately. And here's where this new method shines compared to other 3D model generators like Hunyuan 3D 2.5 Multi-View. Notice that for the top model where the car should have 6 wheels, the generation from Hunyuan is missing a wheel on one side. Whereas ReconViaGen was able to get this correct. And then notice at the bottom, there should be a penguin behind the other plushie. But Hunyuan completely failed to generate the face of the penguin. However, this new model was able to get everything correct. Here's another example showing how this new model is really able to capture all the details of an object or character from different angles. Whereas Hunyuan 3D 2.5, which is one of the leading 3D model generators out there, was unable to do this. The nice thing is, if you scroll up to the top of the page, they've released a free Hugging Face space for you to try this out online. So here's what the interface looks like, and here is where you can upload a video or multiple images of a character. So I'm going to upload these 2 images of this mecha robot, and then here are some various generation settings and GLB extraction settings which you can play around with, but I'm just going to leave everything at the defaults and then click generate. And here is what we get. How cool is that? Not only does it generate the shape of the 3D object, but it also generates the surface. Very cool. In addition to the free Hugging Face space, they've also released a GitHub repo, and over here it says that they are going to release the complete model later, so stay tuned for that. Anyways, for now, if you're interested in reading further or checking out more demos, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Next up, this AI is pretty interesting. So it's called AudioStory by Tencent, and this can generate long-form narrative audio from a video input. Here, they basically trained this model on a ton of audio from Tom and Jerry episodes. And so if you feed it a silent video, it would basically scan and analyze the video and apply the appropriate audio across the entire video. So here's an example of that. I notice that the audio is completely aligned with the actions in the video. Or here's another example. Now, the audio is not perfect, it's kind of low quality, but as you can see, again, it's aligned with all the actions in the video. Or here's another example. Oh boy, this date ain't gonna end well. Now again, note that they trained this model on Tom and Jerry episodes only, so it can only generate Tom and Jerry style audio. But you can also apply this audio style to different animations. So here's the audio model applied to this Donald Duck video. Anyways, the nice thing is they've released everything already. So on this GitHub repo, if you scroll down a bit, it contains all the instructions on how you can download and run this locally on your computer. Everything is under the Apache 2 license, which has very minimal restrictions. You can even use this for commercial purposes. And it seems like they also plan to release the dataset plus the training code, which is fantastic. Notice that here it doesn't state the VRAM requirements. All it says is you need an NVIDIA CUDA GPU. Anyways, everything is on this GitHub repo, so I'll link to this in the description below if you want to read further. Also this week, we have some slight drama going on at Microsoft. So this week I featured an extremely good text-to-speech and voice cloner called VibeVoice. You can basically clone anyone's voice with just a few seconds of audio, plus you can generate outputs that are 90 minutes long with up to 4 speakers. So this is an extremely powerful and versatile tool. You can easily create podcasts and audiobooks from this. If you want to learn more, see this video for a full installation tutorial. Now, originally they released 2 variants of this, a small 1.5 billion parameter model, which kind of sucks, and then a larger 7 billion parameter model, which has much better quality. However, shortly after my video was released, they took down the 7 billion parameter model. So notice that on Hugging Face, we only see this 1.5 billion parameter model over here, which kind of sucks and the quality is way worse. And then also, if you click on their GitHub repo, it just returns a 404 error, at least at the time of this recording. So it looks like Microsoft took down this VibeVoice repo and the larger 7 billion parameter version, which is better quality. Now, we don't know the reason behind this takedown, but I'm sure we can speculate that Microsoft probably deemed this AI too dangerous to be released, since this can clone anyone's voice really accurately and get them to say anything. In fact, they probably have a very rigorous review process before releasing any AI tools, and I think that this VibeVoice just got accidentally released without going through this review thoroughly. In fact, I was kind of surprised that they even released this, because this is pretty revolutionary. So next you might be wondering, well, how can you still use the larger version? Well, fortunately, this larger 7 billion parameter version is still on ModelScope, which is like the Chinese version of Hugging Face. So I'll link to this in the description below, and you can still go ahead and download this full model over here. Plus, for the instructions on how you can install this on Comfy UI, by the way, this is the repo which I went over in my video, notice that for the latest version, which just came out today, they've updated the URL for downloading the large model. So if this didn't work for you a few days ago, try installing this again and it should automatically download the large VibeVoice model. Plus, the good news is this VibeVoice is, or was I should say, because you can't actually access their GitHub right now, this was under the MIT license, which means anyone can clone VibeVoice and re-upload it anywhere else. So since they've already released this, even though they've taken it down, well, it's kind of too late for them. So anyways, that's just a quick update on how you can use this VibeVoice, which is probably the best open source text-to-speech and voice cloner you can use right now. If you've been following my channel, you'll know that I'm a bit obsessed with finding the best AI video generator, and right now the best one you can use is Hailuo, the sponsor of this video. Hailuo 02 is a state-of-the-art video model that excels in prompt understanding, physics, camera control, and overall coherence. They've just released a start and end frames feature which allows you to upload reference images to use as the start and end frame. Hailuo will then seamlessly interpolate everything in between. For example, I can upload this image as the start frame and this image as the end frame, and then for the prompt, I'm going to put time-lapse from day to night. And here's what I get. This is a beautiful and seamless time-lapse transition. Or here's another example where I can upload this image of a cocoon as the start frame and this image as the end frame. And then for the prompt, I'm going to put metamorphosis time-lapse of a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. And here's the result. Look how beautiful and realistic this is. Or here's another example where I can upload this flower bud as the start frame and this as the end frame. And here is what we get. Again, everything just transitions very seamlessly. Plus, over here, you can even insert camera movement to make your generations even more cinematic. This is definitely one of the best video generators out there right now. Click the link in the description below and try out Hailuo today. In humanoid robot news, we have a new demo of the Figure 02 robot doing the dishes. Now, in the past, I featured a ton of pretty impressive humanoid robot demos, such as the Unitree doing kung fu or dancing like this. However, some people have complained that they don't need a humanoid robot to do these things. They just want a robot that can take out the trash or do the laundry or wash the dishes. Well, we've already seen the Figure robot kind of doing the laundry, or at least loading some clothes from a basket into the machine. And then this week, we have a new demo of it loading dishes into a dishwasher. And note that this is completely autonomous, so its actions are not like teleoperated by a human behind the scenes. And the impressive thing about this is it's really hard for a robotic hand to grasp and hold dishes and cups very firmly, right? Because it's not really skin, so it might be a bit more slippery for a robot. But as you can see here, it's able to firmly grasp everything and load it into the dishwasher. Notice that the items here are of different shapes and sizes, but it's able to autonomously manipulate all these items and successfully put them into the dishwasher. So that's a pretty cool demo of an actually useful use case. However, note that this is kind of flawed in that the dishes were already on the table for it to pick up. So they didn't show if it was able to grab the dishes from somewhere else and then walk to the dishwasher while holding the dishes. They also didn't show the complete task, like pushing the tray or closing the door of the washing machine and actually starting the machine. So this demo isn't too impressive yet. In other news, we have a new open source text-to-speech model which can handle different languages very well. So this is called Chatterbox Multilingual, and note that the original Chatterbox was released like 4 months ago, but this week they've added a new multilingual model. So this supports 23 languages and it's under the MIT license. Plus this can do emotion exaggeration control, plus it's really good at zero-shot voice cloning. So you can just upload a few seconds of someone's voice and it's able to clone their voice really accurately. So first of all, here's an example of its expressive control. Let's say your transcript is like this, and of course it needs to yell this out really angrily. Well, first of all, here's what the reference voice sounds like.
Review. The host quibbled over whether it's live free and die hard or live free or die hard.
Alright, so that's the reference voice that it needs to clone, and here's the generation.
So I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore."
Not too bad. Or here's another example. Here's the transcript, and then here is the reference voice that it needs to clone.
Hope I'm not bothering you. Just doing some stretching, maybe a few poses. You'll tell me if I'm bothering you, right? I've even been singled out a few times.
And then here is the output generation.
So let's make my mum's favorite. So 3 Mars bars into the pan. No, don't touch it, Rupert. Then we add the tuna and just stir for a bit. Just let the chocolate and fish infuse. Then a sprinkle of olive oil and for the finishing touch, some tomato ketchup. And there you have it. Take that, Gordon Ramsay.
So here are some examples of its new multilingual support. Now, of course, it can do some common languages, like Chinese, Japanese, Korean. In fact, here is a Chinese example. So here's the reference voice.
花言巧语有之，威逼利诱有之，讽刺辱骂有之。
And then here is the transcript that it needs to speak out. Here's the generation.
来做我妈妈最喜欢的吧，把3根士力架放进锅里，不要碰它，卢伯特。然后我们加入金枪鱼，搅拌一下，让巧克力和鱼融合。接着撒上一点橄榄油，最后加上一点番茄酱。
And as you can hear, it sounds exactly like the reference voice. It's really good at voice cloning, even though we only gave it like a few seconds of reference audio. Or here's an example of Korean. Here's the reference audio.
우리는 정말로 허름한 호텔에 묵었지만 그래도 행복했다.
And then here's the transcript that it needs to read out.
엄마가 가장 좋아하는 걸 만들어 보자. 마수바 3개를 팬에 넣고. 안 돼, 만지지 마, 루퍼트. 이제 참치를 넣고 살짝 저어주면 돼. 초콜릿과 생선이 잘 어우러지게 두고. 마지막으로 올리브 오일을 뿌리고 마무리로 토마토 케첩을 조금.
And then here's a Spanish example. Here's the reference voice.
Produciendo al transparentar de la luz visiones de ejércitos de gigantes, de torres, de castillos. Necesitaba aquella escasez de ciudades.
And then here's the generation.
Hagamos el plato favorito de mi madre. 3 barritas Mars a la sartén. No la toques, Rupert. Luego añadimos el atún y removemos un poco. Solo deja que el chocolate y el pescado se mezclen. Después, un poco de aceite de oliva y para terminar, un poco de ketchup.
So if you're Spanish, let me know if this sounds good to you. It can also do French, German, Italian. Let's scroll down a bit and play some trickier languages which other text-to-speech generators are not able to get correct. Here's a Russian example. Here is what the input voice sounds like.
16 апреля 1985 года. Форест Хиллз, Нью-Йорк, Соединенные Штаты Америки.
And then here's the generation.
Давайте приготовим любимое блюдо моей мамы. 3 батончика Марс на сковороду. Нет, не трогай, Руперт. Потом добавляем тунца и немного помешиваем. Просто пусть шоколад и рыба настоятся вместе. Затем немного оливкового масла и в завершение немного томатного кетчупа.
Very nice. And then here's an Arabic example. Here's the input voice.
أحمل معي أوراق إثبات شخصية.
Notice it's really short. It's only like 3 seconds of audio. Let's see if it can clone the voice and get it to speak this out.
هيا لنصنع الطبق المفضل لدى أمي. 3 قطع مارس في المقلاة. لا تلمسها يا روبرت. ثم نضيف التونة ونحرك قليلا فقط دع الشوكولاتة والسمكة يمتزجان. ثم رشة زيت زيتون ولمسة نهائية من صلصة الطماطم.
And then we have a Hindi voice over here. Let's play the input voice.
I found out that it is your birthday today. So here I am, wishing you a very happy birthday. I hope this year is really exciting for you.
And then here is the generation.
चलो मेरी मम्मी का पसंदीदा बनाते हैं. 3 मार्स बार कढ़ाई में डालो. नहीं, मत छूना इसे रूपर्ट. फिर हम टूना डालेंगे और थोड़ा हिलाएंगे. बस चॉकलेट और मछली को मिलने दो. फिर थोड़ा ऑलिव ऑयल और अंत में टमाटर का केचप डालो.
And then they also have some other languages over here. In the interest of time, I'm not going to play everything for you, but I'll link to this page in the description below where you can check out more demos. Anyways, going back here, the nice thing is you can try this out for free right now online using this Hugging Face space. So the interface looks like this. Here is where you would enter your transcript for it to read out. Here is where you would select the language. And then here is where you would upload a reference clip of someone's voice. So for example, let's say we want to generate this French sentence. And here is the voice we want to clone.
Quant à ce feu, il fallait prendre garde de ne plus le laisser éteindre et conserver toujours quelques braises sous la cendre.
Alright, and then here is where you can adjust how expressive the voice is, and then here it seems that this setting is to dictate the pace of the generation. Anyways, let's click Generate and see what that gives us. And notice that it's pretty quick. It only takes like less than 7 seconds to generate this sentence. And here's the result.
Le mois dernier, nous avons atteint un nouveau jalon avec 2 milliards de vues sur notre chaîne YouTube.
Alright, so that's how you can use Chatterbox Multilingual online. Now, in addition to this online interface, on this GitHub, it also contains all the instructions on how you can download and run this locally on your computer for unlimited times. Now, they haven't mentioned the VRAM requirements for this, but this is quite a small model, which is only like 2 gigabytes. So you should be able to get away with this if you have a GPU with over 2 gigabytes of VRAM. Anyways, all the instructions and links are over here, so I'll link to this main GitHub repo in the description below. In just less than 2 weeks ago, Google released their legendary Nano-Banana image editor, which went pretty viral. It's extremely good at character and style transfer, as you can see in some of my demos. In fact, if you haven't heard of Nano-Banana, definitely see my full review over here where I go over all the impressive things that it can do. But in just less than 2 weeks, it seems like we already have a competitor which might be even better. Now, currently, this is under the stealth name DH3, and you can only kind of test this out on this image arena by artificial analysis. This is where you can basically A/B test different image editors and other models. I'll link to this page in the description below. And here is where you can select the winner for certain image editing tasks. So you need to choose the winner between this and this. So obviously in this case, let's press this one. And notice that at the top here, it will tell you the winner for a few seconds. And in this case, DH3 beats GPT-4o. Or here's another example. Here's the prompt at the top, here is the original image, and the winner is obviously this one. So let me choose this, and as you can see in this example, DH3 also beats GPT-4o. And then here is an image generation example. So this is not editing, this is generating a new image from scratch. And so here's the prompt above. It looks like this one looks a bit better. So let me select this as the winner. And as you can see, DH3 was also the winner in this case. Or here's another example where the prompt is at the top and the original image is over here. In this example, I'm going to have to choose this one as the winner. And as you can see in this example, DH3 also beats the other model, which turns out to be GPT-4o. Now, some of the time it doesn't actually include DH3 in one of the options, so you kind of need to keep repeating and repeating until one of the examples does include DH3. Now, currently we don't have any more info on what this DH3 model is or which company it's from, but from my experience, it seems to be a very competent image editing and image generation model that might be even better than Nano-Banana. Anyways, I'll definitely keep you posted once we have more info on DH3, but just note that we're going to get some additional image editors soon that are as good or even better than Nano-Banana. In other news, one of the best open source non-thinking models out there called Kimi K2 just got an upgrade. So the latest version was released on September 5th, that's why it's called 0905. And this has enhanced agentic coding plus improved front-end coding capabilities. Plus, the context window has increased from 128K to 256K tokens. Now, if you compare Kimi K2 with the previous version, which was released less than 2 months ago, notice that it performs significantly better in all of these coding benchmarks. And if you compare this with Claude Sonnet 4, which is one of the best proprietary coding models out there, notice that Kimi K2 is as good or even better than Claude Sonnet 4. Plus, keep in mind that Kimi K2 is completely free and open source. And if you compare the cost of Claude Sonnet 4 with Kimi K2, notice that Kimi is way cheaper. So, I mean, this is a huge middle finger to Anthropic. Open source models like Kimi K2 or GLM 4.5 already have coding abilities that have caught up to Claude. Plus, if you choose to use it through their API, it's like way cheaper than what Anthropic is charging. The awesome thing is you can use this latest Kimi K2 right now for free using their online platform, which is just kimi.com. I'll link to this in the description below. This interface works exactly the same as ChatGPT, so here is where you would enter a prompt. You can also toggle this on to enable web search, or you can also toggle this on to basically do deep research autonomously for you. You can also choose to upload files over here for it to analyze. Now, I've already gone over the original Kimi K2, so I'm not going to show too many examples here, but here's just a really quick test. Let's get it to create a beautiful CRM dashboard that offers real-time insights into sales, customer engagement, and marketing campaigns, etc., etc. Use a clean, responsive layout, and put everything in an HTML file. Let's click Generate. All right, and here's what we get. So let's click Preview over here, and here is our dashboard. Look how beautiful this is. Everything is interactive and responsive, plus it just looks beautiful. Here's a sales funnel, activity heat map, conversion rate, recent activities, and notice that if I drag these windows, I can actually reposition these cards. How cool is that? And then here's a comparison with the same prompt using Claude Opus 4.1. This is their largest and most performant model. Now, I'm using this natively in the Claude interface, and the dumbest thing about Claude is that, at least over here, it says Claude has reached its max length. So I need to press continue for it to continue generating the code. So after pressing continue, here is what I got from Claude. So notice that it's not as interactive as what we got from Kimi K2, plus some of these cards are missing, including this activity heat map, which I explicitly specified in my prompt. And also, I can't even, click and drag these cards around to reposition them in the dashboard. And keep in mind, this isn't even Claude Sonnet 4. I'm using Claude Opus 4.1, which is the larger and most performant variant. But the result is still worse than Kimi K2's generation. Now, like I said, the nice thing is they've released the models already on Hugging Face, and over here it gives you instructions on how you can download and run this on your computer or link this with other tools. Everything is on this page, so I'll link to this in the description below if you want to read further. Next up, we have a new real-time Minecraft generator called Oasis 2.0 by Descartes. Now, this is basically a simulation of Minecraft, which you can play in real time, but it's not actually Minecraft. Like, nothing is pre-designed or pre-coded. Essentially, this is just a video generator that generates things on the fly as you move around or do certain actions. So on this page, which I'll link to in the description below, they offer a free demo for you to try this out. It only lasts for a few seconds online, but notice that here you can look around with your mouse, and I tried pressing the WASD keys and the space key to jump, but it's not actually working for me, unfortunately. So there's something wrong with this, at least at the time of this recording. But notice that at the top, you can also insert prompts to change the style of the scene. So here we have a Swiss village, and then now we are changing the scene to a medieval world. Or here is a surface of Mars. And notice that, at least for this online demo, you only get to play this for a few seconds before it automatically disconnects you. However, that being said, they have released the model to this, so you can also click on this page, which would give you instructions on how to install this. Now, this is a slight improvement from the previous version, Oasis 1.0, which is also a simulation of Minecraft. But what they've added here is, first of all, this can now run at 1080p resolution at 30 frames per second, which allows for seamless real-time interactivity. They've also added basically a video-to-video feature where you can insert a prompt to change the style of the scene to something else, as you can see in these examples. Now, honestly, this part is not too impressive. I mean, we already have a ton of video-to-video generators, which can easily change the style of something to something else. And honestly, even though they claim that this is 1080p at 30 frames per second, the quality of the generation does not look like 1080p. I mean, it's still very noisy and not as detailed as some other real-time game generators like Google's Genie 3. But nevertheless, it is cool that they've released this so you can actually download it and run it on your computer if you want to. Notice that over here, they do not specify the VRAM requirements, but I'm assuming for a real-time video game generator that's interactive, you'll probably need a ton of VRAM to run this. Anyways, if you're interested in reading further or trying out this online demo, I'll link to this main page in the description below. In other news, we have yet another open source model that's even better than the other models from the top AI labs out there. The thing is, you would never have expected the company behind this. So this is called LongCat Flash, and this is by a Chinese food delivery company called Meituan. I mean, AI isn't even their bread and butter. And the crazy thing is, they've created this 560 billion parameter mixture of experts model. Think of this as like a team of agents working together to help you solve a particular task, and this is way faster and more efficient than the other models while being just as performant. So here are some benchmarks for your reference. If you look at these two benchmarks and you compare LongCat Flash with DeepSeek or Qwen or Kimi K2, and these are like the leading open source models out there, plus GPT 4.1 or Claude 4 or Gemini 2.5 Flash, notice that the last three are closed source and proprietary, so we don't exactly know how large they are, but they're assumed to have a similar size as LongCat Flash. And notice that for these benchmarks, LongCat Flash is on par with all the other models. And then same with agentic tool use, this is even more impressive. So it scored the highest compared to all the other models on these benchmarks. It's also pretty state-of-the-art in terms of coding and instruction following. Now, really quickly, the magic behind how they designed it and why it's so good and efficient is they used this shortcut connected mixture of experts structure that improves training and inference efficiency. It has this dynamic computation mechanism which basically activates only a subset of the parameters needed for each task. So instead of like activating the entire AI model, it only activates, portions of it that are responsible for solving the task. And this optimizes both speed and energy use. The awesome thing is they've released everything already, so you can actually try this out for free online right now. Now, just a friendly warning before I click into this chat interface, note that they don't have dark mode yet, so prepare to expose your eyes to maximum discomfort. Alright, so here's what the interface looks like. Unfortunately, they don't have dark mode yet, but this works the same way as any other AI chat interface. So you would enter a prompt here. You can also click on this to enable web search. So let's try a few examples. I'm going to use the same prompt that I tested with Kimi K2. I'm going to get it to create a beautiful CRM dashboard, etc., etc., put everything in a single HTML file. Let's press generate. And notice that it generates this really quickly. Again, LongCat is designed to be very efficient, but just as performant. Alright, afterwards, here is what we get. Now, unfortunately for now, this online interface can't preview this code in a separate side window, so I'll need to copy this code and then paste it in an HTML file and then open that HTML up. And here is what we get. So again, everything is very interactive and responsive. And if I hover over each card, there is this show toggle here. So if I click on this, notice that it makes the card disappear. Really cool. And then I can also drag these cards around to reposition them. And everything just works out of the box. Now this activity heat map could look a bit nicer if you compare this with Kimi K2's generation. That one does look slightly nicer, but this is not bad. It's still better than what we got from Claude. So that's one example. Next, let's test its ability to do research and synthesize information. So I'm going to get it to analyze e-commerce growth in Asia from 2020 to 2025. And I'm going to toggle this web search on so it can actually fetch the latest information from the web. Let's click generate. All right, here is what we get. So notice that it scoured the web and it found 10 results, which you can expand to see the list over here. And then here is what we get. Here's the executive summary. Here is market size and growth trends. You can see it's very detailed. So here are all the details. Plus it tried to give us a chart. Now, it doesn't have any charting or image generation tools, so it just gave us something like this. And then here's a regional breakdown with a ton of very comprehensive stats. And then here are some key growth drivers, consumer behavior shifts, and then here's another chart. Plus here is the competitive landscape. And then challenges and risks, future outlook, etc., and a conclusion. So, this is pretty good for an open source model. It's quite hard to, objectively compare the quality of such research reports with other models. So it really depends on what you prefer. Each model kind of has a different vibe to it. Or here's another example. For the prompt I wrote, for a 25-year-old athlete with ACL injury, research rehab protocols and return to sport timelines, and then give me a sports medicine report. So here is what we got. Here is the injury overview. Here is rehab phases and timelines. And then it tried to give me a graph, but it couldn't really generate anything. It's just beyond its capabilities, so here is what we got. And then etc, etc. It gives us a very detailed timeline on the goals and protocols from 1 month to the next. And then here's a timeline summary. And then next it gives us a section on preventative training, etc, etc. And then key considerations. So overall, it's also a very detailed but no BS model. This kind of has some DeepSeek vibes to it. In addition to the free online chat interface, they've also released all the models on Hugging Face already. So the models are all over here, plus they've released an FP8 version which is more compressed and quantized. But I mean, that being said, even this FP8 version is massive, and I mean, this is like over 500 billion parameters, so don't expect to be able to run this on most consumer grade GPUs. But if you're interested, or if you're renting some GPU cloud, here they provide all the instructions on how to download and use this. Everything is on this page, so I'll link to this in the description below if you want to read further. And that sums up all the highlights in AI this week. Let me know in the comments what you think of all of this. Which piece of news was your favorite, and which tool are you most looking forward to trying out? As always, I will be on the lookout for the top AI news and tools to share with you. So if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. Also, there's just so much happening in the world of AI every week. I can't possibly cover everything on my YouTube channel. So to really stay up to date with all that's going on in AI, be sure to subscribe to my free weekly newsletter. The link to that will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.